Mrs. Kim, we have an emergency, said Officer Jake, running breathlessly. Korean tourists have been kidnapped, taken hostage. We need you to translate. Rosa Kim, 68 years old, had been a humble translator in the small town of Billings, Montana, for 25 years. As she ran to the parking lot with the police, gunshots could be heard in the distance. "What are they saying?" asked the police chief, listening to the Korean screams coming through the radio. Rosa translated, "They're asking for help." But in reality, the terrorists were saying, "We succeeded. We killed the American dog. Now detonate the bomb." Rosa's hand trembled, but she didn't translate it. Because the terrorist leader's voice belonged to North Korean Colonel Park Jin-woo, whom she thought she had killed at the DMZ 40 years ago. And Park knew Rosa's true identity, Sergeant Rosa Kim, the Korean War's deadliest sniper. 347 confirmed kills, the woman known by the code name Silent Death. But the most shocking part, one of the hostages wasn't just Rosa's daughter Jennifer, it was FBI agent Jennifer Kim. And Park had just discovered that Jennifer, sharing the same name as her mother, was no coincidence. Park's cold voice came through the radio. "Rosa Kim, I know you're here, listening. You killed my family 40 years ago. Now you'll come for your daughter. But this time you don't have your rifle. You're 68 years old, and I'm waiting for you with 20 men." Rosa quietly turned to the police. "They just want money. I'll go and talk to them." But in reality, she was going out on her final mission after 40 years, because a mother will do anything for her daughter. And an old sniper never forgets how to take aim. Welcome to Human Stories. Before we dive into this incredible tale of hidden identity and a mother's ultimate sacrifice, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe stories about forgotten heroes deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. Because today's story will show you that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimates. The morning sun cast long shadows across Main Street in Billings, Montana. Population 8,732. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the biggest news was usually the high school football scores, and where Rosa Kim had lived quietly for 25 years, translating Korean for the occasional tourist and running a small language tutoring business from her modest downtown apartment. At 68, Rosa moved with the careful precision of someone who had learned that every step mattered. Her gray hair was always neatly pulled back, her clothes simple but clean, her English accented but clear. The locals knew her as the polite Korean woman who helped when foreign visitors needed translation, who never caused trouble, who kept to herself. What they didn't know was that Rosa Kim was the most decorated female sniper in Korean War history. Rosa was arranging Korean language textbooks on her desk when the police cruiser pulled up outside her window, sirens blaring. Officer Jake Morrison, 26 years old and 3 years on the Billings PD, burst through her door without knocking. "Mrs. Kim, emergency situation. We need you down at the station right now." Rosa looked up calmly, setting down her red pen. "What kind of emergency, Officer Morrison?" "Korean tourists. They're being held hostage at the old warehouse district. We're getting radio chatter in Korean, but nobody can understand what they're saying. You're the only translator in 100 miles. Rosa's hands stilled. In 25 years in Montana, she'd translated parking tickets, tourist complaints, and marriage proposals, never hostage negotiations. "How many hostages?" "We think 6, maybe more. The situation's escalating fast. We need to know what these guys want. Rosa nodded and reached for her purse. As they walked to the patrol car, she could hear distant sirens converging on the warehouse district. Through the radio, muffled voices spoke rapid Korean, punctuated by what sounded like shouting. "Can you make out any of that?" Jake asked as they drove. Rosa listened carefully. Her expression didn't change, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her purse handle. What the police heard was chaos. What Rosa heard was a conversation that transported her back 53 years to a snowy ridge outside Seoul, to the moment that had defined the rest of her life. Flashback, Korea, 1951. Private Rosa Kim, 19 years old, lay prone on a frozen hillside. Her M1903 Springfield rifle trained on a North Korean compound below. Her spotter, Sergeant Bill Hayes, whispered coordinates through chattering teeth. 200 meters, winds coming from the northwest. Rosa adjusted her scope. Through the crosshairs, she could see her target, Colonel Park Jin-woo, architect of the massacres at Hongcheon, the man who had ordered the execution of 200 South Korean civilians, including Rosa's own family. "You sure about this, Kim?" Hayes had asked. "That's a hell of a long shot." Rosa's finger found the trigger. "My family didn't get a choice, Sergeant. Neither does he." The shot had been perfect. Park had dropped instantly, his men scattering in confusion. Rosa had watched through her scope as they carried his body away, satisfied that justice had finally been served. She was wrong. Back to present. The warehouse district looked like a war zone. Police cars, FBI vehicles, and SWAT trucks surrounded a cluster of abandoned buildings. Rosa could see snipers on rooftops, their rifles glinting in the afternoon sun. Sheriff Tom Bradley, a 30-year veteran, briefed her quickly. 6 Korean tourists were visiting the old mining museum. Armed men took them hostage around noon. "We've got contact, but it's all in Korean. We need to know what they want so we can negotiate." He handed her a radio. "This is the direct line. They've been trying to communicate for the last hour." Rosa took the radio with steady hands. "This is Rosa Kim, translator for the Billings Police Department. Can you hear me?" The response came immediately, and Rosa's blood turned to ice. "Rosa Kim?" The voice was older now, weathered by decades, but unmistakable. "I was wondering when you would come." Sheriff Bradley looked at her expectantly. "What's he saying?" Rosa's training kicked in. Never show weakness. Never reveal intel to the enemy. "He says he wants to negotiate. He's asking about his demands." But the voice on the radio continued in Korean. "Did you really think a single bullet could kill Colonel Park Jin-woo? Did you think I would let the murder of my family go unanswered?" Rosa keyed the mic, her voice steady. "What do you want?" "What I've wanted for 53 years. You, alone, unarmed. You have 1 hour or I start executing hostages, beginning with the young FBI agent who shares your last name." Rosa's world tilted. Jennifer. Her daughter, FBI Special Agent Jennifer Kim, was supposed to be in Seattle on assignment, but Park's next words confirmed her worst fear. "Yes, Rosa. I know who she is. I know what she means to you. The same way you knew what my children meant to me when you put a bullet through their father's heart." Sheriff Bradley stepped closer. "Mrs. Kim, what's he saying now?" Rosa forced herself to breathe, to think, to become the soldier she'd been trained to be. "He wants transportation, a way out of the state. He's given us 1 hour to arrange it." It was a lie, but it would buy her time. "We can work with that," Bradley said. "Standard hostage negotiation. We'll stall, wear him down, look for opportunities." Rosa nodded, but she was already forming a different plan. She handed the radio back to the sheriff. I need to use the restroom. The stress. Bradley pointed toward the command trailer. Take your time, Mrs. Kim. We appreciate your help. Rosa walked calmly to the trailer, stepped inside, and immediately called a number she'd memorized 25 years ago but never used. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Seattle Field Office. This is Rosa Kim. I need to speak with Agent Jennifer Kim. It's a family emergency. Ma'am, Agent Kim is currently on assignment and unavailable. Can I? Tell me she's not in Montana. A pause. Ma'am, I can't discuss agent locations, but Rosa hung up. The pause had told her everything she needed to know. She had 40 minutes to save her daughter's life. Rosa slipped out of the command trailer through the back exit. Her apartment was 6 blocks away, and she had preparations to make. 25 years of peaceful civilian life had ended the moment she heard Park Jin-woo's voice. In her bedroom closet, behind winter coats and old photo albums, Rosa found the lockbox she'd hoped never to open again. Her hands remembered the combination, 06 25 50, the date the Korean War began. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, was her father's M1911 pistol. Below it, medals she'd never displayed, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Distinguished Marksman Badge, and at the bottom, a single photograph. Rosa, at 19, standing with her spotter team. Young, fierce, deadly. The inscription on the back in her own handwriting, Silent Death, 347 confirmed kills. She loaded the pistol, checked the action. Muscle memory from decades of training took over. She changed into dark clothing, sturdy boots. In the kitchen, she found her sharpest paring knife and slipped it into her boot. As she prepared to leave, her eyes fell on a framed photo of Jennifer at her FBI graduation. Rosa's daughter, brilliant and brave, following in her mother's footsteps without knowing the full truth of what those footsteps had walked through. Rosa had never told Jennifer about Korea, about the nightmares that had lasted for decades, about the 347 lives she'd taken, each one justified, but none forgotten. She'd wanted her daughter to grow up believing in justice without understanding the weight of it. Now, that choice might cost Jennifer her life. Rosa walked back to the warehouse district, avoiding the main police perimeter. The buildings were old, industrial, full of the shadows and angles that had been her battlefield for 3 years of war. She found the building Park was using, a 3-story brick warehouse with broken windows and multiple entry points. Classic urban combat scenario. Rosa had trained for this when training meant life or death, not promotion or commendation. She keyed the radio one last time. Colonel Park, this is Rosa Kim. I'm here. I can see you, Silent Death. Come to the main entrance. Slowly, let me see your hands. Rosa approached the rusted metal door. Hands visible, empty. Inside, she could hear voices. Her daughter's voice among them, strong and defiant even in captivity. The door opened. Park Jin-woo stepped out, and Rosa found herself face to face with a ghost. He was 74 now, gray-haired and weathered, but his eyes held the same cold intelligence that had made him one of North Korea's most effective commanders. Behind him, Rosa could see armed men, 5, maybe 6. You look older, Park said in Korean. So do you. Amazing what not being dead will do. Park smiled. Body armor, Soviet design. Your bullet cracked 3 ribs, and put me in a hospital for 6 months, but it didn't kill me. I've spent 53 years planning this moment. Where's my daughter? Safe. For now. Walk with me, Rosa. Let's discuss old times. They entered the warehouse. Rosa's eyes adjusted quickly to the dim light, cataloging details. Exit points, cover positions, weapon locations. Old instincts died hard. Jennifer was tied to a chair in the center of the room, blood on her lip, but alert and unbroken. She looked up as Rosa entered, confusion and recognition warring in her expression. Mom, what are you doing here? How do you know this man? Park answered before Rosa could speak. Your mother never told you, did she, about her war, about the lives she took, about the families she destroyed? Shut up, Rosa said quietly. Agent Kim meets silent death, the most effective sniper in Korean War history. Your mother put bullets through 347 human beings, including my 2 sons. Jennifer stared at her mother. Mom, is this true? Rosa met her daughter's eyes. Yes. Touching, Park said. Family reunions are so emotional, but we have business to finish. He gestured, and his men raised their weapons. Kneel, Rosa. It's time to pay the debt you've owed for half a century. Rosa looked at her daughter, then back at Park. Let her go first. This is between us. No, she stays. She watches. She learns what her mother really is before you both die. That's when Rosa smiled. The same cold, calculating smile she'd worn on frozen hillsides in Korea. You made a mistake, Colonel. What mistake? You assumed I came here to surrender. Rosa moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent 3 years turning violence into an art form. The knife came out of her boot and into the throat of the nearest gunman before anyone could react. She rolled behind a concrete pillar as gunfire erupted. Jennifer, cover! Her daughter, FBI trained and quick thinking, threw herself behind an overturned table. Rosa's pistol was in her hand, and suddenly the warehouse became what it had always been in her mind, a battlefield. Park's men had modern weapons, but Rosa had something they didn't. The knowledge that comes from surviving when survival seemed impossible. She used shadows, angles, the acoustic properties of the building to stay invisible while she systematically eliminated threats. One shot, center mass, target down. Another shot, headshot through the gap in his cover. The third man tried to use Jennifer as a human shield. Rosa put a bullet through his wrist from 60 feet away in dim light. Park himself had taken cover behind a support beam, calling orders in Korean. But his men were dead or wounded, and he was alone with a woman who had once been the most feared sniper in the U.S. Army. It's over, Park, Rosa called out. Surrender now, and you live to see trial. Never. He fired blindly around the beam. Rosa circled, using pillars and machinery for cover. This was what she had been trained for, what she had excelled at before she became a grandmother who taught Korean to high school students. When she had a clear shot, she didn't take it. Instead, she fired into the concrete inches from Park's head. Stone chips cut his face, and he ducked back. That was a warning shot, she called. The next one won't be. Park emerged from cover, hands raised. I yield. Rosa kept her weapon trained on him as she moved to Jennifer, cutting her daughter's bonds with hands that barely trembled. Mom, Jennifer whispered, all these years, why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to believe in justice without understanding its weight, Rosa replied. Some burdens shouldn't be passed down. Police sirens were getting closer. The gunfire had drawn the cavalry. Sheriff Bradley and his SWAT team found them 20 minutes later, Rosa sitting calmly beside the bound figure of Colonel Park, Jennifer taking statements from the wounded gunman, and a crime scene that looked like it had been orchestrated by a professional. "Mrs. Kim," Bradley said, staring at the scene. "What the hell happened here?" "I translated," Rosa replied simply. Later, at the police station, the questions came fast and complicated. FBI, Army Intelligence, and Homeland Security all wanted to know how a 68-year-old language tutor had single-handedly neutralized a terrorist cell. Rosa answered them all with the same quiet dignity she'd shown for 25 years in Billings. Yes, she had military training. Yes, she had engaged the hostage takers. No, she had not intended to kill anyone who didn't force the choice. The classification of her war records meant that most of the truth would remain buried. Officially, Rosa Kim was a retired Army translator who had acted heroically to save her daughter and 5 other hostages. Unofficially, word spread through certain circles that Silent Death had returned for one last mission. 2 weeks later, Rosa returned to her apartment above Main Street. The textbooks were still on her desk where she'd left them. The phone was ringing with students wanting to reschedule their lessons. Jennifer knocked on her door that evening. "I've been thinking about what happened," she said, "about who you really are." Rosa poured tea, the same ritual they'd shared for years. "I'm your mother. That's all that matters." "No, it's not. You're a hero. You saved people. You served your country." "I killed people, Jennifer. 347 human beings. That's what I did. In war. To protect others. To protect freedom." Rosa sat across from her daughter. "War doesn't make killing noble. It just makes it necessary. I want you to understand that." Jennifer reached across the table and took her mother's weathered hands. "I understand that you carried that weight alone for 60 years. You don't have to anymore." For the first time since Korea, Rosa cried, not for the enemies she'd killed, not for the nightmares she'd endured, but for the daughter who saw past the violence to the heart that had always been trying to protect something precious. Colonel Park Jin-woo was extradited to South Korea to face charges for war crimes. His terrorist cell was dismantled, his network exposed. In the end, justice was served not by institutions or politics, but by an old woman who remembered what it meant to take a stand. Rosa went back to teaching Korean, translating for tourists, and living quietly in Billings, Montana. But now, sometimes, when her students asked about Korea, she would tell them not just about the language, but about the people, the families, the cost of freedom. She never talked about Silent Death, but she didn't have to. The town knew. The students knew. And most importantly, her daughter knew. Some stories don't need to be told to be understood. So I ask you, have you ever met someone like Rosa? Someone who carried invisible scars, who bore the weight of difficult choices made long ago? Share their story in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Because here at Human Stories, we believe that the most powerful strength often lives quietly in the hearts of those who've already fought their biggest battles. Subscribe if this story moved you. Hit that notification bell. And remember, sometimes the person teaching you new words once taught others what it means to be free. Until next time.